This Grant County Council regular session meeting tonight, prayer will be led by Mr. Meeks and a pledge of allegiance led by Mr. Lemming. If you would stand.
Our dearest Heavenly Father, we bow before you tonight, and we thank you for the many blessings that you have given to us. We thank you for the blessing that we have to gather in such a capacity as this. And we pray, dear Lord, that you would be with our leaders now at this time, that you would give them the wisdom to discern matters that are before them, that they might make wise decisions. And we pray, dear Lord, that you would be with not only the leaders here in this room, but be with the leaders of this great land that we have as well. Be with all the public servants that put their lives on the line and make sacrifices every day for the betterment of our community. We ask, dear Lord, that you would forgive us of our sins and our shortcomings and help us to live God-honoring lives. And we ask all these things in Jesus' name, and for his sake we pray. Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, gentlemen. If you would do the roll call, please.
Scott,
Here.
Connor,
I have spoken with Mr. Connor this evening, and he had some medical reasons, and he won't be here this evening.
Hicks,
Here.
Perez,
Here.
Pulling, Fleming,
Here.
Middlesworth.
Here. We have a quorum. First item would be the auditor's report.
You have your general fund report and your health fund report. Those still have very healthy balances, even though we did a reduction in the amount per employee contribution to that health fund. It's still in great shape. We did submit the resolution and ordinance to the DLGF for review, and still waiting on a reply from them. And that's it.
Any questions or comments from the members regarding the auditor's report? Thank you. Moving on would be the approval of the minutes for the regular session of June 21st, 2023. Are there any corrections to the minutes? If there are none, I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Perez, a second from Mr. Scott to approve the Grant County Council regular session minutes of June the 21st, 2023. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Minutes are approved. We'll move on to new business. First item under new business, item A, Grant County Sheriff Department, Del Garcia with an additional appropriation within the general fund.
Mr. President, members of the council, on behalf of Sheriff Garcia, I'm here tonight for this appropriation. Appreciate the opportunity to present it to you. We're asking that additional funds, an amount of $150,000 for contractual meals, and then additional $30,000 in our part-time employee salaries.
Are there any questions or comments from the members? It's an additional appropriation for $150,000 for the contractual meals and $30,000 for part-time salaries. And Angie, both these have been advertised.
Yes.
Any questions or comments? I would assume when it comes to the meals, it's just food prices have been up.
We've got a rising cost. In actuality, there was a carryover from 2022 of $80,000. It was also paid out in January this year out of this budget. So we are looking at a shortfall by the end of the year. in January alone, we paid out $118,702.23 out of the budget, which is 560,000.
That'd be that 80,000 as well, right?
Yes, that was in that.
So roughly 30-some thousand.
Yeah, it looks like it's running 65,000 in February, 52 in March, 66 in April, May, 66,000. Again, as I looked at the numbers, we have the increase in inmates. We've been up to, today was 355. I think we've been to 365 the last couple of weeks. So it fluctuates up and down, but I also believe the additional cost of food and probably even occurring last year, it's carried over.
Any other questions or comments?
How do we know that by approving this, we're not gonna run out again here in the next 3 months? Or I guess, why wouldn't I wait till you run out to approve it? Maybe I should ask it that way.
As I look at the current July, we're down to 135,000 in the funding. And so if you're looking at those numbers, sir, it's been 65, 66, 66 for a few months. So maybe up in there for a couple months.
But with that 150 take you all the way to the end of the year, you might have to have more.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear.
I said, will that 150 take you to the end of the year, or will you have to have more?
I hope it takes us to the end of the year. So I don't know, we'd have to calculate that out. Yeah. We've got, 5 more months, so maybe 2 already in there. Hopefully that would be close.
At budget time, we can make sure that we evaluate that.
And that's been discussed for the future budget, yes.
Because I was just looking at the 150, 135, you're at 285. If you got 5 more months, that's 300,000 on 60. So if we're at 65, we're gonna be short. That was my only point.
Okay, no, understand.
Go back to me, I'm just you're gonna be back again, I guess, is what I'm thinking.
Yes, I understand what you're saying, yes. And I understand your numbers, yes.
Is this 30,000 part-time salary, is that for the college kids, or is that for all part-time?
Well, what it is, yeah, the money had been used and we've started hiring or has utilized it in hiring detention deputies. A lot of it was, some of it was college kids and stuff over the period of time. I think at one time we had 8 part-time detention deputies. I think now we're down to 3 right now. We've hired a couple. Some have moved, a couple of, or 2 or 3 have moved to full-time. But it's worked well for us, at least helping manage the detention deputies in the jail and helping keep the staff up. Currently, right now, we are still 6 down in the staff. We've made it, I think we were 1 down at one point in time in May, but now we're down, and we've hired 2 of those detention deputies have now been hired and will go the road here in the future. They're still working in the jail side because they can't go on the road until they have pre-basic academy, which is scheduled in August. But, so that's our numbers there. And with that 30,000, we just hope to continue out and continue with the part-time positions and being able to utilize some part-time work in the jail.
Any other questions or comments?
I mean, this is just best guess, but we're just playing with guessing what the overcrowding issue, correct?
Yeah.
Obviously, the additional appropriation is advertised to the $150,000 amount, so even double, the amount of work.
I just think you're gonna be about 10 to 20,000 short. That's all I was looking at.
There's no other questions. I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion for Mr. Perez, a second for Mr. Lemming to approve the additional appropriations within the sheriff's office in the amount of $150,000 for contractual meals and 30,000 for part-time salaries. Any other questions from the members? Public input? Roll call, please.
Perez,
Aye.
Fleming,
Aye.
Scott,
Aye.
Hicks,
Yes.
Poling,
Yes.
Middlesworth.
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item under new business, item B, Grant County Highway David White with an additional appropriation within the wheel tax fund and also a transfer within Kilo Bridge Fund. Mr. White?
Hi. First thing, was gonna start with the wheel tax, I guess. We were asked an additional 500,000. If you remember right, this wasn't budgeted last year because of the start of it in January. So last month, I believe we had about accumulated $380,000 in that ballpark. So
So you're looking to spend almost $1 million.
well, I'd want to see how much we get this year, but that's, yeah, I'm just asking for 500,000 right now, so.
Any questions or comments regarding the additional appropriation and, 500,000? What paving projects are they specifically?
Just roads in the county that we earmarked to do this year, so.
Do you have a list that you got? Or-
Not with me, but yes, I do.
Is it paving or chipping?
Paving. Yep. The community crossing grant roads is 200 south from east side of the bridge to 400 east, Garthwaite Road from Cass City limits to 200 south. Some of the roads that we've got slated is Oak Kokomo Road, Lincoln Boulevard. Trying to think off the top of my head. We got about 20 of them picked out already, so.
Any other questions or comments?
How much did we do in CCMG this year?
How much do we get?
Yeah.
957,000. The other part of it's on the bridge.
Right.
Yeah.
What's the current balance of the wheel fund?
It's a little over 448,000. That was June 30th. So we did a distribution on them.
It was projected to be right at $1 million for our, if that's what you're asking.
Is the county putting an application together for the second call that's due at the end of the month?
I don't believe we are, because like I said, we've pretty much spent all that.
For the MBH dedicated?
Yeah.
My understanding is that the life expectancy of CCMG and the dollars available is only gonna continue to go down because now they're gonna start switching the focus towards infrastructure, which is neither here nor there because it's kind of counterintuitive because now that we've fixed all the roads, we've crushed all the lines underneath, now we gotta go back and cut up the new roads to fix the new lines. But in the meantime, I'm wholeheartedly in support of throwing as much money as roads as we can while we're getting a 2-for-1 match on it before those dollars go away. So you know, if it's all at all possible to pull any of that off before the second call or getting ready, if there is a third call this year, I would be supportive of that if you need additional microphones.
Jonathan, how will those, that information come about? How do you get that information?
Which everything.
Knowing when those come up, like how much they're doing, when they're available.
I'm doing it from the development end on that one too, so that's how I know.
Yeah, I just
That side of it, but yeah, it's, the meetings that they've established with the municipalities and is that, the focus was roads first, because that was the infrastructure bill. And now they're gonna start focusing on sewer and water and infrastructure like that, which is why I think we're seeing that indicative of the second call for READY. The READY grant is a focus on infrastructure, so.
If you sign up for Indy.gov, it has that information. They send a monthly letter out and
Okay,
anybody can sign up for it.
Yeah.
On there,
I
so.
was curious. I know, read total stuff, I just don't recall ever seeing that.
NDOT has probably 27 different categories of newsletters and emails that you can receive. So that's where, a lot of that we just started from that.
Okay, thank you. All right, we go, those all.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Perez, a second from Mr. Lemming to approve within the wheel tax fund, 4957, an additional 500,000 for paving projects. Any other questions or comments from the members? Public input? Roll call, please.
Perez,
Aye.
Fleming,
Aye.
Scott,
Aye.
Hicks,
Yes.
Bowling,
Yes.
Middlesworth.
Yes. Motion carries.
And the next, I'd like to transfer some money. We had slated to try for Bridge 138, but we wasn't ready to let the design work, so we went ahead and put Bridge 16 in, and we got awarded for that bridge. So right now, I'm going to transfer money to pay for that. That's what the $185,000 was for our match for the community crossing grant. And then the 70,000 is transfer from 138 to contractual services. Commissioner signed an agreement about a year ago with an engineering firm to basically do a study like what they do for the bridge inspection, but this was for small structures, any from culvert pipe 36-inch up to a bridge size. And we haven't had that done in probably approximately 10 years, so we want to get that updated and stuff. So that's what that money's for, to pay for that.
When you receive a list of that, what the assessment is, I'd like to see that.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be fine.
Send me a copy. Any other questions or comments? We have two transfers. I have a motion.
So moved.
Second. I have a motion from Mr. Scott, a second from Mr. Cole to approve the McKinley Bridge 1135. A transfer in the amount of 185,000 from Bridge 138 to Bridge 16. Also a transfer of 70,000 from Bridge 138 to contractual services. Any other questions or comments from the members? Public input? Roll call, please.
Scott,
Aye.
Bowling,
Yes.
Hicks,
Yes.
Perez,
Aye.
Fleming,
Aye.
Middlesworth.
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you. Next item under new business, item C, Grant County Commissioner Mark Bardsley, a jail presentation study with DLZ.
Good evening. Want to thank our fiduciary partners from Envoy. Dale Davis is with us tonight, representing them, as well as Jonathan White from Envoy. Eric Ratz will be sharing from DLZ. And we appreciate their hard work over these many months that we've been together. This project started last year, as you're aware, with our initial reports starting at the end of March of this year. They were on time or just a little ahead of schedule. And so we've been working through the end of spring and into summer to get this final product. And we're very much grateful for all their work. I'm going to turn this over here to Dale, and he'll make some comments from Envoy, and then we'll go to Eric. Following that, I'll be glad to answer any questions at the end, but we would encourage you with all the information that we're going to be giving you in the report, let alone just this cursory report, that in the next few weeks, we have a joint session of the commissioners and council to actually discuss this data and go from there. So I'll turn it over to Dale.
So I am Dale Davis. I'm the Director of Planning for Envoy. We have been retained by the county to be your owner's technical rep. So we are here in our professional capacity to help be the best advisors that we can be with the county's interests at heart, to find a path forward for necessary facilities improvements on county, buildings. So, with DLZ and with Halsted Architects, we've looked at, the county-owned buildings to see what it's gonna take to, one, perform necessary maintenance, but two, to look at their long-term lifespan. So Halsted looked at this building, the courthouse, and, the Salem Bank building, just to figure out and determine what the next best steps are to, what it take to bring them back to 100%. And a big part of that, is also our jail, our juvenile facility. What's it gonna take to get those to where they should be? That's a little bit different process that requires a statutory jail study. So we put together a request for proposals, selected a design firm, and that firm was DLZ. They're very experienced in this realm. And Eric Ratz is here to walk us through their findings and talk about what we can do with our facilities. So, Eric?
He's getting his set up here, so. All right, so I'll do a couple things. First off, while he's setting something up there, I am Eric Ratz from DLZ. I've been at DLZ going on 24 years. Been in the business since 1987, and I developed a passion back then. First thing I ever worked on was a reception diagnostic center, the big expansion down in the Indiana Department of Corrections. So a long time ago, but it's something I just really enjoy working in this. A little bit about DLZ, just briefly. Been in business 107 years. We do this type of work, at least in my area. What we do with architecture, we're the largest, most experienced in the Midwest per the Engineering News record. We've done over 90 counties across the Midwest, doing something very specifically for jails, juveniles, and courthouse projects, just like we're doing here in Grant County. So you have, I believe you have two documents in front of you. We do have some extra ones, if necessary. You have the large document. For the sake of our presentation tonight, we're not going to go through every page of this document unless you want to spend about 3 hours. What we've done is we're doing this handout, which is the one that's stapled. It is the exact same slides. That's what's in the large document. It will be numbered the same in the bottom right-hand corner. So if it says page 96 on the little document, it's page 96 on the big document. So the purpose of our study is really two components, and Dale and the commissioner also said it very well. We did two things. We did a facility assessment on the jail as well as the juvenile facility. Thank you very much. Yep. And if you don't mind, I like to move around here, and I need to point over here to the monitor if you don't mind. If I stand out here. We did two items. One was to look at the facility. The facilities did an assessment. We came with architects, myself, structural, mechanical, plumbing, fire protection, electrical engineers that do this every day. Everyone's hired to do this type of work. We did an assessment on your building. What is the existing conditions of the facility, and also look at, per like the Indiana jail standards, what might need to be improved if you were looking at a renovation of the facility to be able to make sure that you could be in compliance with the Indiana jail standards. Chad Sweet from the Department of Correction is the person that inspects your jail on an annual basis. And then also the other thing that we did is we looked at, let's move the clock forward to the year 2045. What's the needs of Grant County? What are the projected needs? And what I would say is Grant County, and I will say this to anyone, is that you gave me as much information from your jail management system as most any county ever does. I really do appreciate the jail commander and the jail staff of being able to get through all the information, get it to us such that we can make good projections based on how you've been doing business, as well as back in 2015-16 when House Bill 1006 came into play with respect to the low-level felons staying in your existing facility. So it's fantastic information. Those are two things, an assessment, but also looking forward. So as we went through and looked at the facility, obviously, it's 32 years old, your jail over behind us here. It's on multiple levels. I know that you're slightly understaffed, which every county is in the Midwest. It's a very common theme with that. If you look at your facility, you got a lot of needs. Okay, and I encourage every one of you to walk through the facility if you haven't, just to see what the conditions are of the facility. It's also a very staff-intensive facility to staff because of the different floors, how the cell blocks and things are laid out compared to how you look at jails in today's world with that component. You've also got a lot of needs just to keep up and maintain the overall facility. And then the last item was, and our document goes through 60, 70 pages of highlighting every single feature of the different disciplines. We can go through as much of that as you want, but that's in the document that looks at what the priorities are. But then the last thing is to also talk about the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, making sure that it's in compliance with that, which it's not. You do have several areas of your building that are non-compliant with the ADA standards. And it was right at the verge of when you opened the facilities, right when it came out. So there's some issues with that component. What I really want to focus my time on tonight is where do you go? What do you need to project for the year 2045? So I'm going to walk you through some slides and just talk about some different things. First off, if you look at your facility and you go back to when it was built, you were probably a facility across the Midwest. People wanted to come and take a look at it. Okay, it was a facility that was a new facility. Anytime there's new ones, people want to go and take a look at it. But the way your jail is designed and what the type of inmates we have today is something that's very different. You look at the 1980s, everybody can remember 1980s, President Reagan, one of his big mantras as president was the war on drugs. And you saw significant increases in our incarceration rates across the country. Go to the 1990s, you start looking at mental institutions across the country were mainstream, they were closed mainstream into society. Then you turn to the early 2000s, Purdue Pharma, creating OxyContin, and all the opioid drugs all came into play, and it became a real problem. So one of the things that we like to say, and it proves across the board when we work with folks, is there's really three doors into a jail. There's what people really think is the bad people that are in jail, but there's a whole lot more people than just the people that have a lot of the crimes because of the heinous crimes. You have door number two, which is the addictions. Your jail wasn't designed to deal with all the addictions. It's just different types of needs with people that have addictions that are in jail. They will fail miserably typically as they go through their withdrawals when they're in a condition of confinement similar to your facility across the country. Then door number three, which is where they are most harmful to others, is the folks with the mental health and behavioral management issues. And you look at folks that are in jail with the mental health, the behavioral management, the medical, the addiction issues, and you put them in the type of jail that you have, which is much more based on control and confinement, versus today we look at more of care and confinement. It's a different way of looking at it. And I think that if you ask folks from the sheriff's office in jail, is that they need spaces to be able to respond appropriately to the inmates that they have in jail today. One of the things and this is skipping through several slides here, so bear with me. One of the things we always look at is it's very, very important. One of the four primary things with jail studies for projected needs is what is the admission rate. You take away the year 2011 back in when you had 325 on this, but you start looking at 2012 really through 2019, and you're going to see something it's a very common number. Okay, and that's something, it went up and down just a little bit, but it was pretty steady across the board. Then what happened in March of 2020? The world changed, and so did jail, so did yours, just like every other jail in Indiana. Is your admissions dropped off for a lot of different reasons. You didn't have space. You were only looking at folks that had the higher level felonies that were staying in your facility, just like everyone else did. You see your numbers drop off, 21, 22 is the same thing. Well, guess what's happened recently? You just heard 370 or so. 355 that's in your facility. You've spiked, okay? And I think one of the things about that is you really need to work with your judges, your prosecutor, probation, community corrections, everybody to make sure that you keep that under control. Otherwise, you can get a lot more problems with overcrowding. Then you start looking at releases. Releases almost always parallel with what the admissions rate is, and you can see that over the course of time is very similar. So then the next thing, I'm gonna spend a couple minutes here on this one, because this is very, very important, is if you look, the Indiana Department of Correction rates your facility as 274 beds. They are the ones that officially set what the rated bed capacity. I get their spreadsheets for all their annual reports. I get it typically at the end of January. That talks about every facility in Indiana and what the conditions are of this. One of the things that you will see in jails is that jails are most efficient, most effective, most secure, the best safety when they're at 80% occupied. And the reason for that is that you typically need extra beds for classification. What's the person charged with? What are their tendencies when they're in jail? They need to separate the prey and the predator is a different way of looking at it. And so it doesn't mean that you can't occupy over 80%, but that is a goal that's really set forth by the National Institute of Corrections, NIC, and it's a goal that all jails try to look at. I will also say that in the Department of Correction and all of their inspection reports and their spreadsheets, once you get to 80%, if you're 80% full or lower, they classify it as a green color. If you're at 80% to 100, this is DOC, 80% to 100, you're in a yellow category, and then over 100%, you're in a red category. It's a green, yellow, then red, the three different categories. So if you look at this, and if you look at the 274 beds as your rated capacity, and you look at your 80% classification, 224, that's this bottom yellow line. So if you look across here, since 2011, there's never been a point that you've been down to that number of folks that's been in your facility. So it puts a tax onto your facility, both from the inmates, from the wear and tear on the facility, as well as for the staff that are working in the facility. It's a harsh environment to work in. And when you're over capacity, it makes it even tougher from those perspectives. So what we do is that there's a lot of different ways that you can do rated bed capacities. We know approximately 6 different ways, and we do look at a combination of it. But one of the things that we do is we also start to project forward based on all the criteria that we put in our spreadsheets of what is the right number that Grant County may need to see in the future. So if you go out to the year 2045, you go up and you go down over the years. But if you look at the overall trend, you're going to see in 2045 that you're going to need at least 465 beds, at least. That's how many to get you to 80%, but you need to add a 20% factor on top of that to be able to get to the beds for the classification factor. So you can start to see that when you add the 20% to the 465, you're up at 558 beds, which is just a little over double the size of what you have today. And that's to look at your trends. What you'll see across Indiana is that when you do the rated bed projection needs, don't necessarily go to every single year and look at the numbers, but if you look at the trends over a long period of time, they prove to be very accurate across the board. So the next thing to look at, which I think is the most important thing when you look at what your needs are, is the average length of stay. And this is how long someone is spending time in your facility. If you think about it, is if you can get people leaving every day, bed needs may not be as much, but if they stay, the longer they stay, the more beds that you need in your facility. So how we calculate this is you take the average daily population, that last slide we just talked about, and divide it by the annual admissions, and then you take that number times 365. So if you look at it, back in 2011, your average length of stay was about 22.41 days. And you've been up. I would say that these numbers around 30 is pretty typical throughout Indiana. You're going to see some that are a little bit less. You're going to see some that are a little bit more. And it really doesn't make a difference if it's a small jail all the way up to Marion County. You're going to see that those numbers stay pretty common across the board. However, as I talked about earlier, March of 2020, the world changed, and you're going to start to see numbers go up and go up dramatically, just like every other county, honestly, across the country. And now in 2022, we had all the numbers through the full year, is that you did get some high numbers. Not uncommon. Okay, but what I would say is that I would expect that your average length of stay today is less than it was a year ago. Because you have more inmates, you're probably gonna have lower level, folks that are in the facility, which is gonna balance the numbers out. So if this number would continue to increase, what it means is you need to keep building more and more beds, which is not the goal by any means. You need to build the jail that's the right size for Grant County. So as I talked about earlier, one of the things, if anything else I say tonight, National Institute of Corrections, write it down, get on their websites, it's all free information. But they talk to you about the process of designing a facility, getting a jail committee, how do you select people, how do you operate a facility? There's all types of things. It's all free information. It's all based from the, like I said, the NIC, which is the U.S. Department of Justice. Basically, they're out in Colorado in the Denver area with a second office in Washington, D.C. And I would just highly recommend that you get on there and just take a look at some of the information. If we looked out to the year 2045 and said, you know what, all we're going to do is just build the beds. We're not going to build any spare capacity whatsoever. We're going to build the beds that we need. You would do the first circle, which is the 465 beds. If you would build to add that 20% classification factor within the red box, is typically what I would say is the recommendation is it's the 558 beds. Some counties in the state of Indiana, and you may have toured some over the years, have built extra beds. And what happens with the extra beds is a couple of different things. One, they may have a lot of increased potential population in the county. Maybe they're building beds where they want to help other agencies, other counties across the state, and rent the beds out to those other agencies. What I would always say, and what I've always said my entire career, build what you need. If you have extra capacity and you decide that you want to help other agencies and make a little bit of money, it's arguable if you actually make money, but you can have some money, it's okay that you give those beds or sell those beds to other counties. Just something to think about along the lines. But the larger the facility, the more the cost, the more the staffing, it all comes into play. So with this, I noted 4 items for forecasting jail capacity, county population trends. You can see in our big book, we talk about the trends in Grant County. Your admissions to the county jail are going down. It's a little darker blue. County population is very light. It's not much difference, but the dark colors are your average length of stay and your average daily population. Those numbers are going up significantly compared to in the past. So the question always comes back to, do you renovate? Do you expand? Do you build new? What do you do? And there are situations in every county that there are, and we will look at it, is what happens if we expand or renovate the facility. To expand or renovate the facility is likely in a new facility addition, you would have a very different type of operations and supervision of your inmates. Something that wouldn't be on the multiple levels. It'd be something we call more of a modular style of design with a person in the center and a control room and housing units all the way around it. Very different type of approach, much more staff efficient as you go through it. Can you meet jail standards? Can you meet ADA compliance issues? Can you renovate the facility to meet all the needs from an infrastructure point of view while you have 355 inmates in your facility? The answer to that's really, really difficult to do. So then you have to start looking at cost of sending inmates, your inmates, to other counties while you renovate and expand a facility. What we would recommend and what we've looked at is, here's the shocking fact for most of you. Very shortly, you're going to have one of the 5 or 6 oldest jails in the state of Indiana. Believe it or not, you will. Okay, and this is all direct information from the Department of Correction. There's no jails that are left that were built before 1980. Okay, the 3 oldest jails in Indiana that have not been renovated, expanded, added onto are Orange County, Madison County, and Sullivan County. Sullivan County and Madison County are building new jails. Orange County's trying to figure out how to do the funding. Okay, then you go to a couple jails that were built in the late 80s, and then it's going to be you guys. It's just where it's at, because jails have tremendously changed. Population from the mid 80s to today across the country has more than tripled in our incarceration rates. So one of the things we talked about, what happens if you just send folks out of county? We send, one person out of county at $45 a day. Numbers can fluctuate a little bit, but it's $45 a day, $16,000, 16,425. But you also got to move them back and forth. You got to take them to court if they don't do the video arraignment. You also have to still pay for the medical. So if you said, you know what, we're going to keep the size of facility we have, we're going to send 250 inmates to Elkhart, one of the second largest facility that has extra beds. It's going to cost us a little over $4 million a year just to move them to another facility, let alone the transportation and the staff that goes back and forth. Just something to kind of think about as you can look at across the board with that. So what is the scenario if Grant County goes, you know what, let's think about what all the conditions we have in our facility, the cost to renovate the facility, to expand the facility versus what a new facility might be. So if you would look at a 558 bed rated jail, if you would look at building a new sheriff's office, not using this facility, the juvenile facility per the Indiana jail standards today do not meet the square footage requirements of the square footage in a cell to have 2 inmates. You would reduce your population of the facility to be able to make that work. Okay, so you would spend X amount of dollars to go and renovate the facility or have something that maybe have 24 inmates. Dollar-wise, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And I hate to tell you that, but it's the way the facility was designed 20 years ago. There's just some issues with it. So if you would look at a facility of this size, which there's 2 or 3 jails in Indiana that were built just at this size, okay? If you look at it, it's about 150 to 160,000 square feet. I give a little bit of a range because it can be differences of how you do your housing units, how you do your programming, just of how much growth you want to build into some of the core services. What I would say is that the square footages will be defined once we get into the first phase of design. That's when you start really putting pen on paper and you start developing it. And usually, almost always, these numbers go down just a little bit, okay? Which ultimately saves you some money. So the other thing, whatever architect, whoever you work with, this to the council is probably one of the most important things that you could ever see. The last thing for someone from the sheriff's office to do, the worst thing possible, is they come to you the day their jail is ready and they go, hey, we didn't tell you, we need to go hire 15 new staff. We just spent tens of millions of dollars and you don't hear that. Thing that we highly recommend is that you look at staffing costs the day you start schematic design, how you're going to operate your facility. Start looking at your staffing. Over a 20-year period, about 3/4 of the cost of your building is your staff. If you look at a post in a facility that's manned 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, say someone's sitting there watching all the cameras, controlling all the doors, that typically takes 5 people to run that one post. And you will have several of those in a new facility. If their salary plus all benefits, everything, training, certifications, medical, vacation, everything, say that the average salary is $75,000, it's probably not too far off. Over a 20-year period, that one single post value is $7.5 million. And you start looking at that over a period of time, and you start to see that you've got a lot of staffing costs. I would also say that if you're working with your architect, you don't do this, you add an extra post because of the way it's designed, that's a $7.5 million decision that has to be made. That's huge. So these are just some things to look at. Won't go through all of these, but it should be completed at each one of the design phases. Always, always, always. Not just how much does that jail cost, but how much does it cost to operate the facility is equally important. So cost and schedule. These are the big numbers. Okay, and it is just the honest to God's truth of what construction projects like this cost today. If you were going out and looking at building a brand new facility, starting construction in a year from now, these are your costs. What's in the red, that's your bid day numbers. You know, costs over the last 3 years, if you go and look at one of those 3 facilities, the Vigo, the Hendricks, the Hancock, you go look at one of those 3 facilities and you ask them, how much did your building cost? Remember, all those bid in 2019. What's happened since 2019 with COVID, with product availability, staffing, labor issues on projects, costs have went up. So this is looking 2024 with a little bit more inflation to get to that point. But also there is another number that has to go on top of that. Just like when you go buy a car, there's those extra costs that come into it. These numbers, I will be the first one to stand here and tell you, are very conservative. I would fully anticipate, working with the Envoy guys, that these numbers would be at 20% or less. But there's costs that you have to go out. You hire CMs, you hire architects, you have legal fees, you have reproductions, you have your contingency allowances, your furniture, your reproductions, your geotech, your survey, all that stuff adds up to what these are. So you take the red plus the blue, and that's your total project cost. One of the things I'll tell you every day is that, say you have $100 million and your bids come in at $80 million. Doesn't mean you're at $20 million under budget, because there's all these soft costs that go into that. So please, if you ever ask another county, how much did your jail cost? Make sure that you understand, is it construction cost or project cost? Two very different numbers. So with that, just in closing here, is the most important thing that you need to do, your next step is, Grant County, what can we afford? You know, we have these needs, we have a good idea of what the cost may be, what can we afford? And with working with your financial advisors, you can start to say, we have this amount of money. This is how much a project may cost. We want to do it over these amount of years. What can we afford? That's always determine your financing capabilities and opportunities. If and when you do decide to go into a project, it's going to take you 5, 6, 7 months to go through the design, the approvals, working with DOC who has to approve your overall facility. You're going to have a couple of months of bidding, awarding the contracts, then a couple of years ago, build the project. Okay? It's big things. At the bottom is as important as anything, working with the sheriff's office, is understand how they want to operate the facility. What's the policies, the procedures on how they're going to do it, because it's going to be different than what's today. You're going to be able to take the same number of staff and observe a lot more people than what you currently do. You may not reduce staff, but you will be able to observe a whole lot more people than what you do now, just with the movement as you go throughout your facility. So what we've done is we've looked at this facility next door, we've looked at the juvenile facility, assessed it, went through all the calculations, set the priorities of a renovation in the overall facility. And then what we've done is we've looked at what a new facility for Grant County might be. And the most important thing, other than just the financing, is generating awareness. Why is Grant County talking about this? I know you've done it for some time, but then also you need to start building a consensus on this is something that we have to do, not necessarily something you want to do, but it's something that you have to do to be able to meet all the statutory requirements of the inmates that are in your facilities. So with that, I'd like to open up any questions that you may have.
Eric, thanks for the presentation. I guess I will start, if it's okay, Mr. President. I'm trying to find the slide that I was looking at. Can't find it. It appears on the presentation that the rated capacity is based upon the spike that we are seeing. It showed the history. It had 2011.
Or come back from there, I believe. 94. Well, 96 is the average daily population.
You had it. Go forward.
Yeah, this one.
That one.
Yeah, this one always has all the questions.
So to me, it appears that we are basing the rated bed capacity on a spike that we are currently seeing, as opposed to what the average has been from 2011 to 2023. So my question would be, if we take the historical measurement of what our average daily population was, what does it change that number from 464?
It's a great question, and I want to answer it two ways. If you would go to 2021 to there, it's going to be a different number. If you go from here, if you take out the 2 years of COVID where it was flatlined, if you take those out, you're going to see even a bigger jump. Because
it went consistently from 2017 to 2021, it was flatlined. And a big part of that was you had the years that were COVID related, which in my world skews numbers. So what you really honestly have to do is you have to look at the long tenure of what those numbers are. We can absolutely run the numbers for you to take out the high, the low, and to start to balance it. But the other thing that I will always challenge, maybe someone else could answer, was if you look at your rated bed capacity at 274, there was likely a very strong effort by the, I'll say, the criminal justice system of Grant County to keep those numbers there. Because now we're at 355. What's changed? So if you start looking at some of these numbers up here at 355, because if we project the way that your numbers were in 2023, you should have been around 312, 313 with those flatline numbers. So you add in what you've done the first 6 months, this here may become slightly a little steeper. That's why you've got to look at everything, the highs, the lows, the flat lines, to make it all the best you can.
Yeah, because we know population is decreasing. We've had presentations where crime rate is decreasing as well. So you would think with those two areas, those two categories, we're not going to see that big of an increase in that line. If you base that upon future projections.
That's what most counties say. And the reality is that the trends typically continue to go up. I mean, if you did just a projected line, a trend line as we call it, that trend line is going to be right here. Okay? I mean, it's going to be there. Even if you look at it from here, that trend line may be just slightly lower, slightly, but it's not 150 beds lower. We can run it any way you want, but it's just based on doing over 90 of these proved to be very accurate. And not just us, others that do it as well.
And Eric, something I might add to that is, I know the sheriff's department's worked very hard to pull every lever that they can to keep that population down. And they're running out of levers to pull. And so those spikes are not really gonna be spikes. It's gonna be what the population is. And the other complicating factor is what Eric, hit on, not too long ago, and that's the average length of stay is going up. And that's partially attributed to who's actually in the jail, because the sheriff has been able to allow, not gonna say allow some people to go home, but they've been able to classify population and keep certain offenders in while allowing others to have other programs available. But you can only control your population so much with that. To the specific ends of how they got to that, I'd have to defer to the sheriff's department, but I know they've been working really hard to keep that number down.
It's a good question.
I appreciate the question, and obviously, I think Mark and I maybe heard the full report,
Yeah.
big packet. Had some time to think about some questions. In the other information, I think, that's kind of interesting is that we average 15 days longer compared to the other counties as far as holding inmates. I didn't see that figure in your short study, but I think that was what you
Yeah.
talked about.
Right.
That's something that, is there a lower effort to keep the trend line down? The 15 days, again, 274 inmates is quite a few days. I've talked with several different people too, and I don't think the 558 beds will ever be big enough. I think that no matter how big a jail we build, it'll always be full. And right now, I know we have at least 900 wards, several years old. So, yeah, I think it's something that you maybe not look at the number. It's what can you afford and what's the largest capacity you can afford.
Sure. One thing with that is when we design facilities, we have what's called the core services. That's your vehicle salvage port, your intake bookings, your laundry, your kitchen, your support spaces in the facility. Honestly, folks, and your utilities come to site. A good architect would not design all your core services for 558 beds. It's going to be something bigger. Because the worst thing to happen is You decide in 20 years, I need to add 200 beds. Well, you better have a path, you better have a hallway that connects to that. You better have your utilities capped such that you can add on. You better be able to add another washer and another dryer. You better need to be able to add another kettle or another pot in the kitchen without having to go build those spaces, because then you start losing efficiencies. Building a laundry room 4 feet longer where you can add another washer and dryer and add another 200 people is very inexpensive, but you're planning for the future. That's where, that's the number or the trends and projections. But I will tell you, just like I'll tell any other counties, is you got to fight just as hard your criminal justice system to keep your numbers down. If you have a 558 bed jail, or if you have 274, you need to fight just as hard, because it's real easy to fill them up because you got the beds.
Still a phrase from Field of Dreams, if you.
Absolutely.
They will come.
Absolutely. That's the truth. Other questions?
Well, you're looking at 4 years to build this thing, correct? Time you do your architect, all your planning.
So what we would say is, once the commissioners and the council thumbs up, community, everybody supports it, you're at least 3 years.
Okay, 3 years.
Sure.
I'm in the contract business. 3 more years, what do you think parts and materials are gonna be compared to today, just in the last 2.5 years?
So what they will do, it's a good question. What they will do is, if you noticed, we projected this out to a year from now. What the contractor will do is, if they know it's gonna take them 24 to 26 to build it, they're gonna pick some midpoint in that for what the costs are gonna go up or down. What I would say about construction industry is, much as you probably say the same thing, I don't see prices going down. I don't see that. I see labor availability being more hard than what the material availability on sites. It's hard work construction. And if you look at projects, you see less and less people, and I said the same thing on Monday, we see less and less people bidding, contractors bidding work, because there is a labor shortage. So what happens is, it drives the costs up a little bit because there's less people working, there's more debates on whole supply and demand things. If you wait 5 years, it'll be quite a bit more expensive. 7 to 9% is typically what we've seen inflation here right now.
Really? My parts have went up at least 300%.
In the last 3 years, there has been some parts that have significantly went up, significantly. If you look at your same project 10 years ago, it's a whole different ballgame, cost-wise.
So this could potentially cost us another 21% more
It could.
than what you're showing.
This is hard construction cost. This is all the cost, as some people would say, of doing business. So if you add all this together, Jonathan,
110 million.
yeah,
That's just that.
it's,
It's these two.
Turnkey, all in. Turnkey.
The whole project costs us $110 million.
yes,
But then you factor in the 21% increase over the next 3 years.
And you add 21% to 110.
No, what-
this, but we've already projected it 1 year.
Right.
Okay, so that's when your bid would be.
So 14% higher.
Yes.
This would be, as Jonathan said, if you did this at this time, that 110 million is about what you would have to budget for the project. That would cover the construction duration. It's a lot of money.
Any other questions or comments from the members?
Well, that's a lot of money. It's, almost $700 a square foot. It's a 3-year project. You got a shrinking county population as far as people paying for it, with an increase in jail population. That's kind of a lot of hard numbers to try to figure out what's the best way to do it. I don't know how, increasing it to a number, I understand your process, I get it.
Sure.
But I don't know if there's something in between that you can, like Mr. Knowles was saying, bring it back where we get something that's more feasible. I mean, to his point, and is that something that you do, that to say, hey, if you did this, it's $60 million and you're only gonna get 410 beds?
So to address that, because that's a question's asked an awful lot. If you think about, we'll just say 500 beds for the sake of math. If we say 500 beds and we say we're only gonna build 400, Okay, so in essence, we're gonna reduce it. People think 20% of construction. But all those core services are pretty much gonna be the same, whether it's 400 beds or 500 beds. The only thing that really changes is 3 or 4 extra housing units. There is cost to that, but those housing units at that size don't equal. You don't take 20% of the beds away and take 20% of the cost away. Because there's a mass of the project you're gonna build regardless of how many beds.
And sorry, I'm sorry.
Sure.
So what you were saying earlier is my thought process is the same way. If you can come up with an idea to say, this is your first, phase one, and you're gonna do $40 million with the idea that we're gonna add more beds in the future
Sure.
down this hallway. I think that's a whole lot more selling point in this community, because this community turned down privatized prisons. This community's turned down, I mean, tons of different things. I just don't know how you expect, I'm sorry, not you necessarily, but
No, I get it.
the formation of voters to say, yeah, we're for a prison that's gonna cost
$100 million. Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's gonna be a really, really hard sell. And I understand with some of your points, you're saying, oh, you're gonna reduce number of people working in the jail and stuff. But isn't it gonna be two-tiered? Is that part of the way?
So typically it would be similar to what's the juvenile. Okay, if you've been in that, you've got the central control room, and then you've got housing units that go around it. And those housing units, we call it one operational floor with a mezzanine. So the areas where they sit at the round tables or square tables, watch TV, eat their meal, whatever, that is what we call the day room. Okay, that is typically a 2-level space. A 24-foot high ceiling, we'll say it that way.
Okay.
And then when you're standing there, you're looking through the day room, you see cells stacked on top of each other. And then there's like a stair that goes up and a walkway that goes across. So when you're standing there, you can see both levels of the cells from the control room.
So have you been to the old mall?
Oh, yeah.
My joke is, why wouldn't we just turn the old mall into a prison? I mean, you already got the center fountain place, nobody's there, you got wings right and left off of it.
So if you have enough height to do that, I mean, there's been other counties in the Midwest that have taken old furniture warehouses. If you've got the height, you've got to build a secure perimeter within sight of the facility. Technically, you could do it.
But you're not gonna go on a limb and say it to save you money.
You're getting the shell of the building.
Yeah.
But basically everything on the interior, you're gonna have to rip up. I mean, you're gonna have to rip all the floors up. I'm not saying you couldn't do it. We've done studies on it and we've projected it, but it is an option. I mean, there are counties that build pre-engineered metal buildings and they put jails inside of it, which is fine because you have to build a secure perimeter. That is American Correctional Association, Indiana Jail Standards is you have to build materials, a secure perimeter of a jail to be a certain material that the inmates cannot get through. Once you get on the other side, it could be a glass wall. And I'm being a little suspicious about it, but it could be a glass wall. It could be a pre-engineered metal building. It could be precast panels. It can be Dryvit or the EFIS material that you see over at your juvenile facility. It can be anything once you get beyond that secure perimeter. So in theory, yeah, you could do it in a warehouse.
That would be shot down too in the community. I'm just saying,
Sure.
based on the first design when I was here with you, I was just thinking, man, it looks just like the mall in a sense, the way it's a center project.
Sure.
You're two-tiered, you're looking out.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
Keep in mind too, you're then inheriting however old that mall is and the exterior elements and the roof and just you're putting new stuff inside something really old, which.
We've done already.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're pretty good at that. Gotcha.
It takes time to absorb all of it. But quite honestly, and it's the first time anyone sees the stuff, it's like, really? You have to spend time in it. You have to review the things, just ask as many questions at any point in time. Talk to other counties. Again, always, I will say this 1,000 times, understand the difference between the hard construction cost and the total project cost. I know you did the math. You said the 700, that's this number. Okay, and you go to Vigo County, 504 beds, it's like $500.
Yeah, the first number is like 570 a square foot.
Right.
You add the hard cost of 22%.
Sure.
And then you're closer to 700.
That's exactly right.
And that goes back to what you said. It doesn't really change anything if you reduce beds, because you're saying
overall, the square footage isn't your bottom line cost anyway, it's some other things in there.
I guess to me, it would have been more efficient to have figured out what we could actually afford. And then do all this based upon that. I guess one of my concerns is that I don't see any way possible we're gonna afford $110 million jail.
Understand?
And we've just expended all these dollars to get this presentation. That's not gonna happen.
I understand what you're saying. Our fee is not that much, though. I understand what you're saying. It's not that much.
It's not that much.
No, it's not.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
Am I wrong in thinking with the state of the jail and the deficiencies in it? But the ADA deficiencies were, well, I don't want to say it out loud, but we're one wrong lawsuit or tort claim away from having to do it anyways, in some capacities. And
I will say, we've been involved in a lot of projects similar to yours. Similar comments have been made. What I will say is that most of the lawsuits that come about, as long as you are moving forward, doing something, doing a study, starting to look at your financial opportunities, starting to develop a game plan, even if it's out just a little bit, that helps tremendously. But at some point in time, I've been involved, talked about it on Monday. I'll briefly talk about it again. We were not the designers of the project originally, but Vigo County. Okay, they went through a project in 1980. They added on to it in the year 2000. We did not do either one of those. They got into a federal lawsuit where the commissioners had to go on a monthly basis to the county attorney, federal courthouse on Ohio Street, downtown Indianapolis, and stand in front of the judge and say what they were doing. We hired us to do something very similar to this. The judge said, okay, that's what you did last month. What are we doing next month? And kept going, kept going, kept going. Wanted to see our design, wanted to make sure that we were meeting all the items that were in the lawsuit by Michael Sutherland, who filed the lawsuit on behalf of the inmates. And if you look at Vigo County, they've got a lot of things, a lot of counties that don't have in Indiana, especially with the visitation, with the video arraignment, with the program classrooms, some of the things that we did there. We get down to construction, first person wanted to tour it was the judge, federal judge, said, let's go. I'm bringing my whole team. We're going to go look at it. Who came next was Kevin Orm, who's Director of Construction Services for Indiana Department of Correction. He wanted to take all of his administrative staff and his inspectors to walk through the facility to say, this is what they did. This is how they did it the right way for the right reasons, but it also addressed the federal lawsuit. It can happen. There's other counties in Indiana that have went through it as well.
Were you guys the ones that redid the jail 6, 7 years ago?
Here? No. No. Not at all.
So Envoy wasn't, they didn't,
DLZ, I'm DLZ Architects.
you guys didn't
We
redo
did
the
not.
jail?
No. I've been in your jail several times, but never worked on it.
On the juvenile facility, we did.
I just wondered,
We would.
when you spent all that money,
Amoresco?
when you spent all that money, why didn't you bring it up to code then?
There are certain things we can't bring up to code unless we actually tear out parts of the building.
So how'd you get by with it? I mean, if they're not up to code, you gotta go by state code, how'd you get by with it?
We've been grandfathered for the last little bit.
So if you're grandfathered, you're still grandfathered, it don't change.
Not until we get in front of a federal judge. That changes.
I wasn't trying to open a can of worms. I'm just like, I mean,
So legitimate.
part of this is because 15 years ago, the commissioners decided to hire a political intern whose job it was to read all the tort claims and file them. So I have a perspective of reading all this, and I know that there's, and from reading some of the stories that you said, that in those unfortunate events, those kinds of mandates just drive the cost up, which is just going to be unfortunate. Good, bad, or different, at some point, I think we have to make a decision, and Mr. Poling was right in his assessment, because everything that we've heard in the projects that we've been doing in Upland and obviously the industry and the market, I mean, basically since COVID, basically every month you wait at 7%, and you look at 7% over those course of 3 years, you're almost at 300%. So when you look, every month we sit here and talk about it more, unfortunately, we are looking at a bigger number. whatever the answer is.
And I will say to that point, if this is a path chosen to go down, we bring financial advisors along, we bring a municipal advisor, there'll be bond counsel. It'd have to be right sized to what the capacity really is. We can't spend more than the money is there, but we also have to accommodate the beds that are there. But that's the path of design. So that would be the next step. But as Commissioner Barsley said, planning more on a joint session so we can really go down those paths and discussions together.
I don't want to rush it. I don't want to make an informed decision, but I look at that number, and I look at 7% every month from here on out. Not encouraged.
So I'll just finish on this. I've designed a lot of facilities. I have no desire to design a great big facility just to design one. My absolute goal is in 2045, you've got the right size of facility. Whatever that number is, that's what I want to do for you. And I think it's important just for you to know that what it very likely will be, but at the same time, you can only do what you can afford. And if you're going to do something less, you just need to think about today how you can expand that in the future, realizing that in the future, if you go add 100 beds, those 100 beds 10 years down the road is going to be a lot more expensive than those 100 beds today. Just, I think you guys can probably vouch for that. It's the scale of the project, but you can only build what you can afford. We all deal with that every day in our personal lives.
But why was 2045?
20 years out in essence, because you're going to start construction. 2045 is the year we look at, 20 years out basically.
So in 2046, we're going to be in the same boat.
I think that if you want to look at, but at the same time in 2024 and 2044, you can say, well, we still have extra bed capacity. But in 20 years out, at that size of facility, you'll be in the same boat.
And the jail will be 20 years old.
And the jail will be 20 years old. It's how jails are. You know, I think back here, we'll say the same thing. That jail's not like your house. It's not like the library. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week by people that do not want to be there.
No, for sure.
And it takes your jail, 32 years old, not me, others much smarter than me. It's basically 3 years of life for every age that it is. Your jail's, in essence, it's been abused like it's been a library for 90 years. That's how they look at it. 3 years for every year of age.
The wear and tear.
The wear and tear. It's beat up every day. No matter how hard they work to maintain it, it's beat up every day. People are always trying to do stuff.
Get out.
And that's why they're expensive.
You said what, 3 years for every year?
Yeah. Okay. So 32 years, 96 years. That's basically how they look at it.
Our jail's out pretty good then.
Yeah. If you look at that way.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a valid point, is you're still able to use your facility. You're still, your facility folks are still figuring out ways to get door locks to work, to just be able to get the elevators to work, to maintain it. There's absolutely validity to that. Because there's newer jails in Indiana that are looking at being replaced because they're not even as good a shape as yours.
Well, a great presentation.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Let's allow anyone from the public that would like to come up and ask any questions and deals in 5 minutes. Just come to the podium and state your name and your address, and allow you 2 minutes to talk.
Hello, my name is Ryan Howell. I live at 2909 South Branson Street, Marion, Indiana. And as a taxpayer, I'd like to see if our taxes maybe go to people staying out of prison or jail, these human beings. And, I know we have very little power in doing a lot of this stuff, but I see a lot of churches that you know, I struggle in churches and a lot of families are just obliterated. I think this comes down to like the family, the weak families that we have here and the narrative, you know, the narrative's gotta change. And, if you have stronger families, that, you know, and get the government out of family affairs, I think that weakens families too. But, you know, another thing is, you know, felons, I mean, you make a felon, you make a career criminal, and, but there's one thing, I do see that I like, there's a lot of people, you know, inmates working outside the jail. Maybe they can learn a skill to keep them out of jail and, treat them like human beings, and, maybe that'll help keep people out of jail. And another thing is that we all have to ask ourselves, and I know we all are in the same boat, have not very much we can do about it, is that southern border, all the drugs, all the fentanyl, I mean, it's enslaving everyone. A lot of people here have kids. And you know, bad time in their life, like it has a bad time in their life, and, you know, next thing you know, they take you know, a drug that makes them a slave for the rest of their life, and then they're in and out of jails. But, you know, just, I think, I would like to see my tax dollars being spent on making a family, American family, our families in this community stronger. And that way, these human beings can stay out of jail. But, I yield back.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm Ed Hartman, live in the Fairmount area. One thing that some businesses do when they expand, they have a plan to make the next expansion. So if you're looking at what do we need now? What do we need 10 years from now? What do we need 20 years from now? You don't have to build it on the first time. Make a plan so that the building can be expanded to what you can afford. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public input? And that concludes the public input. Again, thank you, DLZ. Envoy, do you have anything else you'd like to add? We're just leaving it as, we'll pick a date for a joint session with commissioners.
Yes, sir.
That's no problem, bud. It's a good job. That's great. Short recess, 5 minutes. You wanted to stay longer, I know. Yep. Go back to new business. Next item, under new business, item P. Grant County Extension, Christina Goff with the transfer within the general fund. She sat patiently waiting.
Hopefully this is easy, right? Yeah. Yes, it was very interesting though. I enjoyed that. So, yes, I'm here for a transfer, I guess from two different spots, from the equipment repair to overtime of $325, and from supplies to overtime for $850. This was due to an overage of hours during our 4-H fair that we just completed about a month ago. So it's to enable our staff to help us during the fair, get everything done. So that's our request for tonight.
Any questions or comments from the members? Motion?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Perez, a second from Mr. Scott to approve the following transfers, equipment repair to overtime, an amount of $325, and from supplies to overtime, an amount of $850. Any other questions? Public input? Roll call, please.
Perez,
Aye.
Scott,
Aye.
Hicks,
Yes.
Poling,
Yes.
Lemming,
Aye.
Middlesworth.
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item under new business, item E, Grant County Auditor Angie Jarvis with an additional appropriation within the ineligible homestead fund.
Yes, I'm asking for an additional appropriation within the IHF fund for $7,000 for contractual. It's a contract for services to assist with the budgets that are coming up. Do you have any questions? There is a copy of the contract in there.
So additional appropriation in the amount of $7,000 within the ineligible homestead fund, which is a fee-driven fund, correct?
That is correct.
Commissioners already approved.
Yes, the commissioners have approved this.
If there's no questions, I entertain a motion.
President, make a motion to approve the contract as.
I have a motion from Mr. Lemming, a second from Mr. Poling to approve the additional appropriation within the ineligible homestead fund, amount of $7,000 along with the contract for services. Any other questions from the members? Public input? Roll call, please.
Lemming,
Aye.
Poling,
Yes.
Scott,
Aye.
Hicks,
Yes.
Perez,
Aye.
Middlesworth.
Yes. Motion carries. That concludes the new business. We'll move on to old business. Item A, Grant County Commissioner, Mr. Barsley. And with an additional appropriations within ARPA. Again, this is something we approved at the last meeting, but it's going to the second reading, hearing. Good evening.
Mr. Stewart was going to be with us, but I'm happy to stand up. I understand that at your last meeting, you did table a portion of the request in the Mill Township Fire Administrative request. We, as commissioners, would ask to have that removed from the current request so that we can review some of the questions that you were asking about that and ask for the airport drainage project line item in the jail annex chiller to move forward.
Oh, we did approve chiller.
We did approve the chiller.
It's already approved. Okay.
It's a second reading because it was an additional appropriation, didn't pass unanimously on the first reading. So this would be to approve the airport sewer water project at the 500,000, the drainage project for the general drain improvement fund, 200,000, and the jail annex chiller and boiler project at the 1.3 million. And this is this won't, hypothetically, if you wanted to withdraw, or the council didn't feel comfortable approving the whole project, the whole second reading, you'd have to vote it down, and then you'd have to create a new motion, and that would have to pass unanimously or to go to another second reading. That makes sense.
Whatever you prefer.
So I need a motion.
I'm on. I'm okay with two of the items. One of them I'm in question of. Just trying to figure out the best way to approach it.
But this all has to be voted on as one. We have to kill it and start it again.
Correct. I guess a no motion would die, right?
So you don't want a negative motion.
No, I mean, it would, yeah, it would die this,
You would just, there would be no motion to pass it
Yeah.
as it's presented. If somebody could make a motion tonight on an amended course of action. It's already been.
Township, so we need to.
no, we already tabled it in the last one.
Did,
But technically you can't remove it.
that's right, yeah, exactly. because that's the way that I've
The
been.
original request.
Yeah,
So we have to just, we have to kill it function.
so we need to,
When we approved this at the last reading, we tabled the Middle Township.
You're saying it wasn't part of the.
There
We
were
took-
there were two votes, or there were two motions. There was the first motion to table Mill Township.
Yeah.
And then there was the motion to approve Drain, Airport, and Chiller.
So the three items could be a motion tonight.
So the second readings for the
three.
airport, drainage, and chiller.
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions? Comments? Is there a motion?
I mean, I guess we all should have had the foresight to ask it last meeting. I don't think we did, and then in the last 10 minutes, but are we about to, I mean, maybe, Mike, maybe your hesitation was the same as mine. I'm looking at the 1.3 number, thinking we're about to spend money on a chiller that can that be potentially used?
I can answer that question. The boiler chiller project services both of these buildings.
Okay,
So even if we have a future where we do not use the jail complex, it services this building.
okay. And we'll service whatever's over the, okay.
Yeah.
All right, I feel better. Sorry. I'll make the motion.
For a second. Not here in a second.
A motion for all of them?
It has to be for all.
Oh,
I think it's the
The three
airport,
that we
sewer,
approved.
drainage,
I'll
and
check
chiller,
back.
not the Mill Township.
I'm just making sure.
I'm not here in a second. Okay, so that dies. Dies, I guess. So is there a new motion?
I would make a motion to do what Mr. Perez, that I thought initially was to do the chiller and the boiler project at the 1.3. That's what my motion.
But not the other two.
Yeah, because I think they want to work on a couple things anyway, so.
Well, they said they wanted to work on Mill Township, but
For the Middle Township.
not the other two. And this body passed the other three on the first reading already, but we just let it die on second reading.
I'm not gonna make a motion for that, so if it dies, it dies.
So Mr. Lemming's motion is for the jailer, annex chiller and boiler project.
Okay,
So the drainage project for general drain improvement fund, remind me again.
We have multiple projects that we can use it on, whether it's Badley Owl, whether it's out with the Rob Dish tile, work that can be done out there. Chuck can tell you about that for years. We've got plenty of work that needs to be done there. Unique thing about the ARPA money is that it stays in ARPA money until we have projects that we can draw from it. So it's still gonna be a part of our ARPA money until it's actually needed. Won't transfer.
So my hesitation, which I couldn't say anything, it was a motion that had already been presented.
Right, I have a motion on the floor.
You do, right now, do, you're right. No, you don't.
there you go.
No.
For the chiller, I'll second the chiller.
Do we need it? I mean, we could motion them all single out if you wanted to, right?
As long as it's unanimous.
Okay, so I have a
Gotta be
motion
unanimous.
from Mr. Lemming, a second from Mr. Scott to approve the jailer annex chiller and boiler project to the 1.3 million within the ARPA funds. Any other questions or comments from the members? Public input.
That is a good thought, though.
Roll call, please.
Lemming,
Aye.
Scott,
Aye.
Hicks,
Yes.
Perez,
All right.
Poling,
Yes.
Middlesworth.
Yes. So that passed, they don't have to have a second reading. Is there any other motions?
Mr. President, I make a motion for the approve the drainage projects for general drain improvement fund of $200,000.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Scott, a second from Mr. Poling to approve the drainage project for the general drain improvement fund. About 200,000, in ARPA. Any other questions or comments from the members? Public input? Roll call, please.
Scott,
Aye.
Poling,
Yes.
Hicks,
Yes.
Perez,
Aye.
Fleming,
Aye.
Mibblesworth.
Yes. Motion carries unanimously. Any other motions?
I mean, to me, the airport sewer water project, I guess there's just some concerns of not knowing exactly what this project is used for. Some things that I've heard is the potential for annexation that would take place from the city of Marion. If that happens down the road, it would seem prudent to me that Marion Utility, this would be a project for Marion Utilities as opposed to ARPA and in using the ARPA funds.
Yes, and what I found out, this was like a $2.5 million project.
Actually, 3, I think, is what they're talking about. I know that they are asking for the same amount of money from the airport authority itself. The city of Marion and the municipality will be covering the rest of it. Our sum total would be the 500,000 for whatever they continue to do. And again, if you approve it, we hold it until it's actually in motion.
Is there a motion?
Yeah, so that's like what we had on the first reading, so it's in partnership with, yeah, the city and the airport.
Municipality, as I understand it, the municipality, the utilities, the municipality of Marion itself.
Yep.
Are 2 contributors and the airport, so we would be 1 of 4 contributors to the project. And I believe that they tried to get actually, Gas City to, in some way, discuss putting some money in since really it serves as a regional airport.
Yeah, it's a huge asset, so. I will absolutely make that motion to be a partner in that project. I think this is an absolutely qualifying expenditure for ARPA dollars.
I have a motion. Is there a second? Not hearing a second. I just would like a second.
Thank you.
I think that concludes it. Moving on, next item under old business, item B, Grant County Clerk Pamela Harris with the salary ordinance amendment. Good evening.
Thank you, so I didn't even get up, but I had a couple things I wanted to say, because I was kind of nervous. I've never been involved in a second reading before. But first, I want to thank you for even considering this increase. I did speak with Justin, and I believe you all received an email, I believe, from Justin. Did they not get that email from Justin?
Yeah.
You did? Okay, good, good. Okay.
No, it's forwarded to us.
Great. If you should, approve this increase, as far as my chief deputy, of course, I would lean toward the 4, but if however you would decide to go. And I want to publicly apologize, especially to you, Mr. Lemming. I believe I came across a little bit more passionately than what I intended. And you had made a comment about you were concerned that if this body were to grant the increase, that your concern was that I might come back for the budget hearing in August and ask for additional raise with everyone else. And I said that I wanted to let you know I would. My thought there, I did not mean to be disrespectful, but my thought was that if the rest of the county employees were granted an increase and my staff was not, then we would be where we are. And so I apologize for coming across that way. Okay. Okay. Now I'll be still.
Again, since this is the second reading, it'd be a vote, yes or no, and if you wanted to bring a new motion or a different way, we're going to motion.
Well, I appreciate your communication back and I appreciate Council President forwarding it. If there's not any other thoughts, but I have no problem making the motion.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
What this is.
No, can I speak again? No,
Wait a
just,
second.
okay.
I have a question.
I have a motion.
I said I would make the motion if you wanna not accept that and just, so,
Okay, I'll accept it. Anytime.
yeah.
$4,000.
Oh, yes, that in Justin's note, if you see Justin's note, for my chief deputy, he said that he thought that it would be appropriate to go 3 or 4. And I talked to him and I said, well, Justin, I would sure appreciate 4, but he didn't say yeah. But anyway, Justin did say 3 or 4 would be more appropriate, if that.
That was my hesitation of doing it as a bid sheet, knowing.
No, yes, I'm with you then.
Okay, is there a motion? There's no motion.
I think he's trying
No,
to,
I'll make the motion.
he's trying to form
No,
that.
I absolutely will. Based on everything that was said, your bottom number's not changing, you're managing your budget, and we looked at the numbers, and I took time to look at the numbers between now and then, and this gets it back on pace to comparable positions, throughout the county. You are, by far, your employees are, in comparison, the lowest across the board. This would put them on par with their counterparts. And the bottom number is not changing at the end of the day. That's what I would have concerns about. So how you choose to manage it, I will choose to support that. I will absolutely make the motion to accept this as presented.
I have a motion from Mr. Craig, second from Mr. Hicks to approve the second reading for the Grant County clerks. The first deputy to the 33,242. The second deputy to 32,135. The head bookkeeper correct to 33,661. Correct.
Marina, Closter.
And still turning a balance of over $1,100.
Any other questions or comments from the members? Public input?
He said as presented.
Roll call, what is it?
What?
You said as presented,
Yes.
which is what she submitted last month, right?
That's what we just turned down.
We're voting on,
But that's what he just said.
we're voting on what we done last month.
You have to vote on that first.
You changed the figure, right? The number
No.
No changes.
No.
No,
So you're wanting a $5,000?
Deputy?
You have to vote it up or down, because that's the motion in the second. But yeah, it's for the.
Okay, I thought we just had a motion to present or to approve as presented and it died for lack of a second.
No, he-
No, he just withdrew it,
He withdrew it so you could say something.
and he just redid it, the same thing.
Okay, public input? Roll call, please.
Perez,
Aye.
Hicks,
Yes.
Scott,
No.
Pulling,
No.
Fleming,
No.
Middlesworth.
No. Motion dies. Is there a new motion?
find my paper here. President, I make a motion to approve the request by Mrs. Harris, Grant County Clerk of Courts, as presented, with the exception of reducing Chief Deputy from 44,045 to 43,045.
Everything else?
Everything else,
same,
same.
4 instead of 5?
Yes, 4 instead of 5, stay in line with what our Human Resources Coordinator recommended.
There's a second? Motion from Mr. Scott, second from Mr. Hicks to approve the same amount of raises except the chief deputy to the 44,000. To the 4,000 increase instead of 5,000 increase. Any other questions or comments from the members? Angie, you're clear on that?
I need to know, effective as of,
Next pay is when?
well, we just got it. Four. The beginning of the pay period would be on the 31st, July 31st, for the next pay.
Beginning of 31st? Is that clear? Okay with that?
You
To me, oh, I'm sorry, I like talking to the council. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Public input? Roll call, please.
Scott,
Aye.
Hicks,
Yes.
Perez,
Aye.
Poland,
Yeah.
Lemming,
No.
Middlesworth.
Yes. The motion carries, correct, but we'll have to have a second reading.
Does the motion include the?
Yes, salary ordinance.
The motion including the start date.
How do we do that?
It would just be retro to July 1st if it gets passed at the next meeting.
Okay.
That'd be correct, it would be. Don't.
Thank you.
Okay, see you next.
That's my fault. All right, let's get
Uh-huh.
it.
Family likes to eat every Friday, so we're just bringing you back. Would you please?
Thank you so very much.
Yeah.
We'll be doing budget hearing next week when we pass.
Old, next item on our old business, item C, Grant County Court Services, Melissa Stevenson, with the budget.
Good evening. Last month, you guys approved the use of the opioid settlement funds, a portion of those to be used for a treatment coordinator, and agreed on the salary at $40,000. So I'm just here to present the budget for it. The budget really is just about, to cover the salary, the FICA, the PERB insurance and life. FICA at $3,060, PERB at $5,680, life insurance. We kind of estimated it as if it was going to go back to the original. I know it's reduced here, but we wanted to make sure we had enough space in case it changes at $21,300, and the life insurance at $230 for a total budget of $70,270.
Great questions. Request to approve a budget within the opioid restricted settlement fund, 1237. There's no questions. I entertain a motion.
Mr. President, I'd make a motion to accept it as presented.
Second. A motion from Mr. Lemming, a second from Mr. Poling to approve the budget within the opioid restricted settlement fund 1237. The salary amount of $40,000, FICA at $3,060, PERF at $5,680, insurance at the $21,300, life at $230, which brings the total to $70,270. Any other questions or comments from the members? Public input? Roll call, please.
Lemming,
Aye.
Poling,
Aye.
Scott, Hicks,
Yes.
Perez,
Aye.
Middlesworth.
Yes. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item under old business, item D, IT, Marcus Elliott, with additional appropriation.
Oh, good evening, gentlemen. So, I'm just here returning, for my additional appropriation of $50,000 to, keep my contractual services, in the clear until the rest of the year. This came out of a need, because we purchased, new backup software that was compatible with our, new data center. And, we also, chipped in money for, the court reform grant, where we, purchased, cameras for the, interior of the courthouse to get that old system replaced.
Any questions or comments? Again, this is the second reading on this. If there's no questions or comments, I entertain a motion.
Mr. President, I make a motion to accept the additional appropriation request as presented.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Lemming, a second from Mr. Perez to approve the additional appropriation request in the amount of $50,000 to IT's contractual services. Any other questions or comments from the members? Are you sure, Marcus, this is all you're not gonna come back for?
Yes, sir. So I did an expenditure check and I should have, either $4,600 or $3,800. So I usually keep it pretty lean, so.
This backup software gonna make it where the sheriff can get a hold of other counties around us?
No, so the backup software is for our, files in our systems.
So our sheriffs, what I've been told is that they actually have to give the state police some of our radios because they can't contact, the sheriffs can't be contacted by other counties, like in Kokomo, if somebody was to be murdered and head down 22, our sheriffs can't get up, their radios can't get through.
I think that would be a radio system question. And like I said, I'm not too up to date on that.
That'd be a question for Dr. Hicks.
Yeah, probably Kevin would have a better knowledge of that.
Motion on a second. Is there any other questions or comments? Public input? Roll call, please.
Lemming,
Aye.
Perez,
Aye.
Scott,
No.
Hicks,
Yes.
Poling,
No.
Middlesworth.
Yes.
4-2-2.
Passes.
And, one other note I'd like to say is, I know at the last meeting, there was some, discussion on the Stanley system over in the jail. And, I talked to Mr. Bardsley and, we're in agreement that we need to come up with a long-term plan. And now there could be possibility of a new jail in the future. We need to get with the sheriff's department and really come together and figure out a way to get all that done. For the camera system, like next year, maybe instead of paying the one service agreement, like we can go with a cheaper option. And instead of the sheriff's department calling Stanley directly,
they would call us and then we would go and see if we can remediate the issue. And if we can, then we would reach out to them.
Okay, well, I'm glad you're here, you're working on it.
Yeah. I know that, came up at the last meeting, so
I
I
hope
voted to.
if this county ever does build a new jail, that contracts, security, jail and all that. would be better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope that's in the planning,
Yeah. Well, thanks again, gentlemen. I appreciate it.
As far as Mr. Poing, your comment about the radios, I mean, the county had switched over totally to the three towers the county owns. And it's a closed system, it's not on the state's tower. So the state's dragging their feet. Because before we was on the state's tower with Motorola, and Motorola, has the contract with the state. And they're kind of the state's dragging their feet on programming our channels into their radios. So it's just something that's gonna take some time. But yeah, you're right, I think that, last I heard that they have programmed our new channel into the radios. That may take some time, but
Right.
I know it's happened in other counties too, but it's done the same system, so.
Yeah, I don't know if there's sour grapes in that, because normally, when we were on the state system, they want you to give them, the money that we put towards our own system, and we didn't do that this time, so.
But, a lot of people don't realize that we was having so much trouble with the state system.
Correct.
Site trunking and communication, downfall, pitfalls.
Yeah, it's
So-
flooding on one particular tower.
So they wouldn't do anything about it, and now, this is what we got, but I'm sure it's all gonna get worked out, that's all I know.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next item, under old business, item E, Grant County Health Department, James Randolph, with the salary ordinance amendment, and the preparedness grant.
Hello, I'm speaking on Mr. Rudolph, or Dr. Rudolph's behalf. We came before you last month and presented the budget for the 23-24 STEP grant, that's the preparedness grant. And I failed to ask, after that was passed, for the salary ordinance amendment. So I would like to ask that to be taken care of tonight. And then, if you agree to do so, retro it back to July 1st.
It's just one of those things we overlooked at the time, and
I just forgot. I did too, sorry.
it's a salary ordinance amendment request, for the preparedness grant. Any other questions or comments? I entertain a motion. What date did you say, the ninth?
July 1st.
Oh,
That's
July
when the
1st.
grant began.
Mr. President, I'll make a motion, approve as presented.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Scott, a second from Mr. Perez to amend the salary ordinance, make it effective July the 1st. Within the reimbursement grant to preparedness grant, $12,000 for the preparedness quote grant, $5,000 for the support staff, administrative and financial, $4,140 for the support staff logistics, $2,925 for FICA and PER, and then $934 for expenses, travel, supplies, and other expenses. Angie, you have everything you need.
I did.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the members? Public input? Roll call, please.
Scott,
Aye.
Perez, Hicks,
Yes.
Bowling, Fleming, Middlesworth.
Yes. Motion carries.
Gentlemen.
Thank you. I believe. All right, committee reports from the members. Mr. Scott,
Yes, sir.
you update the council on the. Same.
Yeah, I can. We met with, one member of the union negotiating team from the Grant County Sheriff's Department. I thought it went extremely well. They have made a presentation of, what they would like to see added, for the 2024 budget. So, we will meet and negotiate on and discuss on our end and give something back to the sheriff's union, probably sometime towards the end of August, in regards to what their needs and concerns are.
Thank you. Any other committee reports from the members? Our next meeting will be Wednesday, August the 9th. Just go ahead and put these on your calendar. The budget dates are August the 16th, 17th, 23rd, and the 24th. And then on the August 9th meeting, our next regular meeting will be the non-binding review of the other units.
16th, 17th, and what?
16th, 17th, 23rd, and 24th. And we typically will have a special meeting to summarize the budget on the 11th.
The ninth,
First of October, something.
second Wednesday.
Is that right?
What do you say?
Ninth is second Wednesday.
Yeah, that's correct. That'll be our regular scheduled meeting, and then our budget hearings will begin the next following week.
That's how
The
we-
way we always process.
Yeah. I guess not the third Wednesday.
Mm-mm.
You're right.
I'll be out of town on the conference on the 23rd and 24th, so I will tie to the accelerator and get here as fast as I can.
Maybe it's like a state rep, you get like, you go over when you're heading to a meeting.
You know,
There's some leeway.
Yeah, I don't know, there's like a state trooper that looks exactly like me, but shorter than me.
Would love to pull you over.
Yeah, I'd probably love to get me, so.
Okay, anything else you'd like to add? Good. Meeting adjourned.
Anthony,